Magic through Paris. It was a cool, crisp evening in Paris, the kind where the air was tinged with the faint scent of fallen leaves and the promise of autumn. The sky, an ever-deepening canvas of violet and rose, stretched out endlessly above, as the sun's final rays kissed the rooftops of the city. The streets were bathed in the soft, golden glow of the Eiffel Tower, standing tall and proud in the distance, its lights twinkling like 1,000 stars against the darkening sky. The calm Seine river below mirrored its light, creating a shimmering ribbon of gold that wound its way through the heart of the city, as if Paris itself was gently pulsing with life, ready to embrace the evening with all its energy and charm. From where Emma stood, leaning on the iron railing of the Pont Alexander III, everything seemed perfect. The distant hum of the city, the laughter of passing tourists, the clinking of glasses from nearby cafes, and the sweet, melodic strains of a saxophone playing on a street corner. Every sound seemed to blend into the symphony of Parisian life. There was magic in the air. It was the kind of magic that made Paris more than just a city. It made it a living, breathing thing. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, every street a hidden story waiting to be discovered. And yet, as the lights of the Eiffel Tower flickered in time with her heartbeat, Emma felt oddly out of place in it all. Beside her, Lucas walked with a slow, comfortable pace, his hand loosely wrapped around hers. His presence was warm, as familiar as the city itself, and yet tonight, something felt different. Not in the way he looked or the way he smiled at her, but in the space between them. It was subtle at first, a tiny crack in the perfect veneer of their relationship that she couldn't quite place, but it was there, undeniable and growing. It was their anniversary after all, a night that should have felt special, something beyond the ordinary, beyond the comfort they had come to know. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that, despite the beauty of Paris surrounding them, there was an unspoken distance in the air. She glanced at Lucas, his face illuminated by the warm, golden lights reflecting off the river. He was smiling, as he always did, with that gentle, easygoing smile that had first drawn her to him. It was a smile that said everything was fine, that everything would always be fine. And for the most part, it was. Their life together had been good, steady, predictable, full of those little moments that people often longed for. They had built something solid, a foundation of shared experiences and quiet joy. But Emma wondered if, in the process, they had somehow built something too solid, too safe, too predictable. Paris had always been their backdrop, romantic, yes, undeniably so, but also, at times, suffocating in its familiarity. They had wandered through the cobbled streets of Montmartre on lazy Sunday afternoons, shared croissants at quaint cafes with windows overlooking the bustling crowds, strolled hand in hand by the Seine as the sun set behind the bridges, its fiery colors reflecting off the water. It was all beautiful, all perfect in its own way. But over the years, Emma had begun to feel that she was walking through the same scenes over and over again. She and Lucas had done it all, every romantic gesture Paris had to offer. But somewhere, along the way, the magic had started to feel like a well-rehearsed act, one that had lost its spontaneity, its spark. As they walked along the riverbank, their footsteps quiet against the stone, Emma couldn't help but look around at the couples who passed by, some laughing, some deep in conversation, some simply strolling in comfortable silence. Each one seemed to have something she and Lucas no longer shared, an effortless joy, a lightness in the way they moved through the city, as though Paris itself had cast its spell on the menu, making everything feel fresh, exciting, full of possibility. Emma felt a pang of envy, though she couldn't quite place why. It wasn't that she didn't love Lucas. She did, more than anything. But there was a sense of yearning inside her, a longing for something more. A longing for that rush, that spark, that adventure they had once had. That sense of discovery. It was almost like they had reached a plateau in their relationship, a place where everything was fine but nothing was thrilling anymore. And tonight, of all nights, Emma wanted something different. She wanted the kind of connection that didn't need to be nurtured, the kind of excitement that didn't fade with time. She wanted an adventure, something out of the ordinary, something that would shake them both awake from this quiet, comfortable slumber they had been in for far too long. As the Eiffel Tower's lights flickered, casting their golden glow across the city, Emma couldn't help but wonder if she was just dreaming, longing for something that didn't really exist. Was this the way relationships were supposed to be? Steady, reliable, but lacking in the unpredictability that made life feel vibrant and alive? Or was she missing something? Was there a way to rediscover that spark, that magic, that sense of adventure, without losing everything else that made their love feel secure? She turned to Lucas, her gaze lingering on him for a moment. There he was, standing so close, and yet the distance between them felt so vast, as though they were two strangers sharing the same space, both searching for something that wasn't there. She squeezed his hand gently, but even that felt mechanical, a reflex rather than a sign of the deep connection she once felt so naturally. Tonight was supposed to be different. It was their anniversary, the anniversary of the day they had started this journey together. But as the city sparkled and hummed around them, Emma couldn't shake the nagging thought that something was missing. Something big. Something essential. The spark they had lost was the one thing she hadn't been able to find, no matter how many times she had walked these streets, no matter how many times they had shared this moment together. Was it still possible to find it? Or had they both simply become too comfortable with the idea of being happy in the most predictable way? Do you think there's something we're supposed to discover here? Emma mused, her voice soft, almost lost in the gentle lapping of the Seine against the embankment. She tilted her head, watching the way the water shimmered in the soft glow of the city lights, as if it too was caught in a moment of stillness, suspended in time. There was a certain serenity to the scene, perfectly poised, calm, yet under the surface, there was a restlessness that Emma couldn't shake. She had always been drawn to the river, to its flowing rhythm, to the way it moved with purpose, yet could never quite be caught. It mirrored her own feelings tonight, wanting to move, to find something beyond the ordinary, yet unsure of where to go or how to begin. She let her gaze wander to the far side of the river, where the lights from the bridges created trails of gold across the surface, twisting and turning like long-forgotten stories. Somewhere in the distance, a boat passed, its soft horn drifting across the water, almost like a sigh in the night. It reminded Emma of the many nights she and Lucas had shared here in Paris, their laughter echoing in the quiet air, their hands brushing together as they wandered through the city's hidden corners. It had always been enough before. The romance, the beauty, the certainty that came with being in love in a city as timeless as this. But tonight, something was missing. Something she couldn't quite name. Turning to Lucas, she searched his face, hoping for an answer to the question that had been lingering in her mind for days. Is there something more we're meant to experience here? The question had been growing like a quiet ache inside her, an unspoken curiosity that she couldn't ignore. Paris had always been a place of discovery for them, a city where they had built memories, both big and small. But what if, after all this time, there was still something they hadn't uncovered? Some adventure, some new chapter, some unexpected twist in their story? Or was the discovery, in fact, already behind them, something they had already lived and now, like so many things, it had simply become part of their routine? Do you think there's something we're supposed to discover here? She asked again, her voice carrying just a bit of uncertainty this time, as if the question itself was fragile, as if asking it would either bring clarity or leave her with an even greater sense of longing. She watched Lucas carefully, hoping to see some spark of recognition in his eyes, a flash of understanding that would say, yes, there's still something waiting for us here. Lucas squeezed her hand and smiled, a smile that was warm and comforting, but also a little distant, as though it carried the weight of his own thoughts. It was the kind of smile he wore when he was trying to reassure her, trying to make everything feel right, even if there was a tiny part of him that wasn't entirely sure. I think we've already discovered it, he said, his tone light, almost as if the question wasn't as heavy as Emma felt it to be. This is Paris, after all. His words, though meant to be comforting, felt like a quiet dismissal. Emma didn't say anything at first, but the weight of them hung in the air between them. She wasn't sure if he understood the depth of what she was asking, or if he simply didn't feel the same restlessness she did. Paris, yes, it was beautiful and magical, and they had experienced it in ways few people ever would. But Emma couldn't help but wonder, had they already reached the pinnacle of their journey here? Had they seen everything there was to see, done everything there was to do, and now, all that remained was the quiet, comfortable existence they had carved out together? She longed for something more, something beyond the familiar, something that would remind her that their adventure wasn't over, that their story was still unfolding. Emma looked down at their intertwined hands, the comfort of his touch suddenly feeling a little too familiar, a little too still. She let out a breath, her thoughts swirling around her like the autumn leaves scattered in the wind. Maybe I'm expecting too much, she thought. Maybe this is it, the discovery, the adventure. Maybe this calm is all we need. But even as she tried to convince herself of this, the restlessness inside her refused to be silenced. There had to be more than this, didn't there? There had to be a new chapter, a new discovery that would ignite their souls once again, that would remind them that love, like the city around them, was always evolving, always surprising, always full of possibilities. She turned back to Lucas, studying his face, looking for any trace of the deeper question that had been weighing on her heart. But all she saw was the familiar smile, the smile that had seen her through countless moments of joy and sorrow, the smile that, for all its warmth, somehow felt like a reflection of everything she had come to expect. She wanted more than expectations. She wanted to feel something more. She wanted to feel the spark again, the feeling of discovery that had brought them here in the first place. Paris, she murmured quietly, her gaze drifting back to the twinkling lights of the Eiffel Tower in the distance. It's beautiful, but I feel like we've seen it all, Lucas. I need to know. I need to feel like there's more to discover, like there's still something out there waiting for us. Lucas didn't immediately respond, and for a moment, Emma wondered if he truly understood what she was saying, or if he was just waiting for her to let go of whatever feeling she was grappling with. She could feel the weight of the question between them, but instead of the weight lifting, it seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. Paris, it seemed, was not just a city, it was a mirror, a reflection of their relationship, both beautiful and familiar, but also quietly revealing that something was missing, something they needed to find. Emma squeezed his hand back, her voice barely a whisper. Is there more to us, Lucas? Or have we already discovered everything there is to know? But just as he said that, Emma's gaze caught something strange in the shadows beneath a bridge. It wasn't the usual Parisian charm, the quaint cafes tucked in narrow alleyways, the street performers strumming guitars or playing violins as they poured their souls into the night, or the couples strolling hand in hand, lost in the magic of the city. No, this was different. It was something that didn't quite belong, something that stood out in the way an unexpected puzzle piece might appear in a neatly arranged collection. Beneath the arch of the bridge, tucked away from the casual observer, was a small, futuristic caravan, its sleek, metallic exterior gleaming under the pale glow of the streetlights. The lights it emitted weren't the warm, yellow hue typical of Parisian lamps. These were cold, almost ethereal, a soft blue and green that flickered with an otherworldly rhythm, as if the caravan itself were breathing, alive with energy. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure what it was that drew her in. Maybe the way the caravan's presence felt completely out of place in the otherwise timeless Parisian landscape, or the way the lights seemed to hum, vibrating softly in the cool air, creating a sense of mystery and intrigue. Paris, for all its wonders, didn't often surprise her anymore, at least not in the way this did. It felt as though the city itself had opened a hidden door to something she wasn't supposed to see, something buried beneath the polished veneer of its romantic facade. She leaned forward slightly, her breath catching in her chest. The caravan wasn't like anything she had seen before. It was small, almost intimate, but its design was undeniably modern, with sharp, angular edges that contrasted sharply with the smooth, rounded lines of the classic Parisian architecture surrounding it. The lights that glowed from within seemed to dance just beneath the surface of the caravan's walls, almost as if they were alive, pulsing with an energy that was both strange and inviting. It was unlike the usual hidden gems she had come to expect from Paris. There were no flower boxes hanging from windows, no vintage signs or quaint street art. This was something else. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she stared at it. The whole scene, the way the caravan stood in the shadows, was eerily quiet. The only sound was the faint hum of its lights, and even the usual sounds of the city seemed to soften around it, as though the world itself had decided to hush in reverence for whatever lay beneath that bridge. There were no people around it, no passerby who seemed to notice it. It was as if the caravan was waiting for someone, waiting for them. Her gaze shifted from the glowing caravan to Lucas, who was still smiling, his attention still on her. But when he saw the direction of her stare, his smile faltered, his brow furrowing slightly as his eyes followed hers to the strange sight below. Emma didn't need to say anything. She could tell from the shift in his expression that he was seeing it now, too. His face softened, a mix of curiosity and wariness crossing his features, as if he wasn't sure whether he should be intrigued or cautious about what they were both seeing. "Do you see that?" Emma whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking any louder would shatter the fragile mystery of the moment. There was something undeniably captivating about the caravan. It seemed like a secret, something hidden in plain sight, and Emma felt an undeniable pull to it, a desire to discover what lay within. But there was also a sense of unease that gnawed at her, a feeling that perhaps they weren't meant to be seeing it at all. Lucas didn't answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the glowing caravan, a mix of disbelief and intrigue playing across his features. What is that?" he asked, his voice hushed, as though speaking too loudly might disturb the strange tranquility that surrounded the little caravan. It was unlike anything either of them had encountered in the city before. No sign, no owner, no indication of who or what might be behind its presence here. It stood alone, out of place, yet there it was, casting its eerie glow over the water, undisturbed by the noise of the city around it. The hairs on the back of Emma's neck stood on end as she watched the caravan, her mind racing with questions she couldn't quite answer. What was it doing there? Why was it glowing like that, almost as if it were alive? And why was it calling to her in the way that it was? The more she looked at it, the more it seemed to pulse with a strange, magnetic energy that beckoned her forward, urging her to approach, to uncover its secrets. Yet a voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning, telling her that there was more to this than met the eye, that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. Emma's breath quickened, her body tense with anticipation, but also with caution. The caravan was undeniably beautiful in a way that felt almost unreal, like a dream woven into the fabric of reality. But the dream was unsettling, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that, no matter how beautiful or intriguing it was, stepping closer might lead them somewhere they weren't meant to go. She took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest, torn between the lure of the unknown and the quiet safety of the path they had been walking. The caravan's lights seemed to flicker more intensely now, as though it was aware of their attention, drawing them in even closer. Lucas turned, his eyebrows raised, his expression a mix of disbelief and amusement. A caravan in Paris? That's odd. His voice carried a note of skepticism, as if the very idea of a caravan, so out of place beneath the elegant bridges of the Seine, was absurd. The city was known for its charm, its history, its architecture. Nothing about Paris screamed caravan. In fact, it felt almost like a punchline to some unspoken joke, the kind that would be whispered only among the locals. And yet, there it was, a strange, glowing vessel nestled in the shadows of the bridge, an anomaly that neither of them had ever expected to encounter in this city of lights. Emma didn't immediately answer him. She just stood there for a moment, the oddity of the scene hanging in the air between them, as if the question itself was too big to grasp all at once. She could feel the pull of curiosity wrapping around her, growing stronger with each passing second, and it was impossible to ignore. Why is it here? She wondered. Who would bring something like that into Paris? Her gaze remained locked on the caravan, now with an even deeper sense of intrigue than before. Something about the way it sat there in the shadows, glowing softly against the backdrop of Paris, made her forget for a moment the ordinary world they had known. She could feel the weight of its mystery pressing against her chest, almost like a challenge, as if it was waiting for them to take the first step, to unlock whatever secrets it held within. The quiet hum of the lights, the strange sense of life in the air, it all beckoned her, compelling her to move forward. Lucas, still staring at the caravan, took a slow step forward, as if testing the waters, as if he too could feel the odd pull. Weird. But maybe it's one of those new-age Parisian pop-up experiences? You know, like an art installation or something. His voice was hesitant, unsure, but tinged with that same curiosity. The skepticism was there, yes, but so was something else. An excitement, a thrill of the unknown that, much like Emma, he couldn't quite ignore. They both knew that Paris was full of surprises, hidden gems, unexpected encounters. This, though, felt different. This wasn't just a quirky street performance or a tucked-away cafe. No, this was something bigger. Emma, her pulse quickening with a growing sense of adventure, didn't need to be convinced. She could already feel the door of the caravan calling to them, the soft pull of the unknown growing stronger with every passing moment. She took a tentative step forward, then another, her footsteps soft against the cobblestones. Lucas followed her, his presence beside her like a comforting anchor, yet she knew that whatever was about to happen, they were in it together. As they drew closer to the caravan, a chill ran down Emma's spine. The closer they got, the more alive the air seemed to become. The hum of the lights was almost hypnotic now, filling the space between them with an eerie sense of anticipation. The world around them seemed to blur, the sounds of the city fading into the background, leaving only the soft glow of the caravan and the sense that something was waiting just beyond that threshold, something that could change everything. Just as they reached the entrance, the door to the caravan creaked open, its sound sharp and unexpected in the stillness of the night. The sound was almost like a whisper, beckoning them closer, as if the caravan itself had been waiting for them to arrive. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure whether it was the thrill of the moment or the strange sense of destiny that had led them here, but she couldn't deny that a part of her felt like this was where they were meant to be. A soft voice, warm yet distant, floated from within the caravan, its tone inviting yet mysterious. "Welcome aboard," the voice called, almost as if it had been waiting for them to arrive. "Your adventure begins now." Emma's breath caught in her throat. There was something oddly comforting in the way the voice spoke, something that told her they weren't in danger, but also something that reminded her that they were stepping into the unknown. The words seemed to hang in the air like a promise that whatever was about to unfold would be more than just a coincidence, more than just a strange encounter in the heart of Paris. No, this was something bigger, something more. Without a second thought, Emma found herself reaching for Lucas's hand, her fingers brushing against his, the connection between them electric with the same sense of anticipation that had filled the air. She glanced up at him, a silent question in her eyes. He didn't hesitate. His hand gripped hers firmly, his eyes wide with a mix of excitement and uncertainty. But they both knew that once they crossed that threshold, there was no turning back. Whatever was about to unfold, it would be a journey they couldn't unsee, couldn't undo. Without another word, they stepped forward, crossing the threshold of the caravan. The moment they did, the air around them seemed to shift, like stepping into another world, one that felt both foreign and familiar at the same time. As the door swung shut behind them, Emma felt the last remnants of the city's familiar sounds disappear, replaced by a quiet stillness that was oddly comforting. It was as if they had entered a space outside of time, a place where the rules were different, and the adventure they'd been craving had finally begun. The caravan was nothing like they expected. As soon as they stepped inside the world they had known, the one filled with the flickering lights of Paris and the soft sounds of the Seine, seemed to vanish entirely. The air inside was cool and crisp, almost like a breath of fresh air, yet with a subtle fragrance that Emma couldn't quite place. It was neither musty nor stale, but instead carried the delicate scent of something far more unusual, something that hinted at secrets and unexplored realms. The floor beneath them wasn't uneven or worn, as they might have imagined in a small, makeshift space. No, it was smooth and gleaming, with a faint, iridescent glow that seemed to shift colors as they moved across it, like walking through a dream, where the ground itself responded to every footstep. It felt as though the floor were alive, shifting ever so slightly, but with a grace that was both subtle and mesmerizing. The walls were made of some strange, smooth material that reflected light in a way Emma had never seen before. At first glance, they appeared metallic, but there was something warmer, softer about them, as though they could bend and change with the touch of a hand. A series of floating orbs hovered lazily around the room, casting a gentle, ambient glow that made everything inside the caravan shimmer with an ethereal light. The lights didn't seem fixed or attached to anything. No wires or lamps hanging down from above, yet they floated, almost weightless, dancing around them in a slow, deliberate manner. It was as if the entire space was alive, breathing with a kind of quiet energy that pulsed in time with their every movement. Everything about the caravan felt timeless, as though it existed in a space outside of normal reality. It was neither futuristic nor archaic, yet both. The interior was filled with sleek, modern furnishings, Elegant couches with plush cushions, glass tables that reflected the soft light in intricate patterns, and shelves lined with books that looked old and weathered, yet were clearly untouched by time. Some of the books even seemed to flicker, their titles changing with the blink of an eye, as though the very pages themselves were alive, telling stories that shifted with each reader. "This is amazing," Lucas said, his voice filled with awe as he spun around, taking in the sights. His eyes were wide with wonder, the excitement in his voice palpable. He reached out a hand to touch one of the floating lights, which immediately shifted away from his fingers in a delicate, almost playful manner. He laughed softly, marveling at the way it responded to him as if it had a mind of its own. "I can't believe this is real. This is beyond anything I've ever seen." Emma couldn't help but agree. Her heart raced with a mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. It was as if they had stepped into a realm that existed on the edge of possibility, a place that somehow defied the natural laws of the world. She reached out, running her fingers along the smooth, metallic surface of one of the walls, half expecting it to feel cold or hard. But instead, it was warm and responsive, almost as though the material was alive, shifting beneath her touch. She felt a strange, inexplicable sense of comfort in the motion, as though the walls themselves were welcoming her, wrapping her in their embrace. The ceiling, too, was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was high, far higher than the compact space of the caravan should have allowed. Above them, the surface of the ceiling shimmered like the surface of a calm lake, rippling with soft waves of light that seemed to move of their own accord, creating an illusion of endless depth. It was as though the ceiling had no end, no beginning, just an infinite expanse that stretched beyond their comprehension, leaving them suspended in a space that was both familiar and utterly foreign. Emma stepped further into the caravan, drawn to the soft glow that seemed to emanate from every corner, every object within. Her eyes caught sight of an intricate, crystal-like object in the center of the room, a sculpture, perhaps, or an artifact. It pulsed gently with light, shifting from deep blue to violet to silver, as though it was alive with its own rhythm. Her curiosity piqued, but before she could get any closer, a soft hum filled the air, the sound almost like a lullaby, deep and soothing. The lights shifted around them, guiding their attention toward a large cushioned chair near the far end of the room. It looked inviting, welcoming, and without even thinking, she felt her body move toward it, her footsteps almost automatic, as if the caravan itself were drawing her in. Lucas, too, seemed to be drawn deeper into the space. He moved toward another corner of the caravan, where a series of windows that seemed to open into nothingness, glowed with the same soft, shifting light. His hand traced the edge of one of the window frames, and for a brief moment, Emma caught a glimpse of what looked like the night sky, but it wasn't the Parisian skyline she knew. This sky was darker, deeper, filled with stars that flickered and danced, as though they were part of an entirely different universe. It was beautiful, surreal. She felt her heart race with wonder at the sight, but also a twinge of unease. Where were they? What was this place? A low, melodic hum continued to fill the air, growing stronger as they moved deeper into the space. Emma turned to Lucas, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. Without speaking, they both seemed to realize that they had entered a space beyond their understanding, a place where the rules didn't apply. It felt like the universe was holding its breath, as though they were on the precipice of something monumental, something that would change everything they knew. As soon as the door closed behind them, the caravan seemed to shift. The air inside hummed, a soft, melodic vibration that filled the space with a sense of movement, as if the very essence of the caravan had come alive. Emma felt the floor beneath her feet tremble, a subtle but unmistakable shift. The air around them grew heavier for a moment, and then, without warning, the entire caravan seemed to lift. At first, it was barely perceptible, a slight tug at the soles of her shoes, as if gravity had momentarily loosened its hold on them. But then the sensation grew stronger, the hum deepening into a steady rhythm, as if some unseen force had wrapped itself around them and gently pulled them upward. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she looked around, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and disbelief. The caravan wasn't just moving. It was floating, lifting off the ground as if the very laws of physics had been bent and twisted into something beyond her understanding. She turned to Lucas, eyes wide, searching for some explanation in his face, but he was staring out the window, just as stunned. He didn't seem to notice her gaze at first, so transfixed by the sight before him. Outside, the ground beneath them was shrinking. Paris, that magnificent city they had known so well, began to fade beneath them, its glowing lights growing smaller, distant, as if the city itself were surrendering to the vastness that was unfolding. The Eiffel Tower, the Seine, the cobbled streets, they all shrank into tiny, glittering dots, like jewels scattered on a velvet cloth. For a moment, Emma felt like she was holding her breath, as though the very air had left her lungs. The city of Paris, with all its history, its charm, its hustle and bustle, was vanishing, slipping away into the distance. It felt surreal, like they were leaving behind not just the physical world they knew, but the very essence of it. Paris, the real Paris, was receding, its familiar sights and sounds fading into the backdrop of something far more extraordinary. "Are we flying?" Emma's voice trembled as she whispered the question, her eyes fixed on the window. She half expected to hear the sound of engines or propellers, but there was nothing. No roar of a plane, no rattle of a helicopter. The only sound was the soft, steady hum of the caravan, a sound that now seemed to fill every inch of space, as though the caravan itself was singing a low, comforting lullaby. Lucas turned to her, his face a mixture of awe and disbelief, his mouth slightly agape. "Seems like it," he replied softly, his voice distant as if the reality of the situation hadn't fully settled in yet. His hand instinctively reached for hers, his fingers wrapping around hers tightly as if to ground himself in the moment. He, too, was still processing the sudden shift, still trying to make sense of the impossible. This is unreal," he added, the words barely more than a breath. They both turned back to the window, their gazes glued to the world below. The streets of Paris, so full of life and energy only moments before, now looked almost like a painting, the buildings mere brushstrokes of color beneath them. The familiar landmarks, the glowing lights of the Eiffel Tower, the gentle curve of the Seine, were now reduced to mere specks, slowly dissolving into the vast expanse that surrounded them. The further they rose, the more the city seemed to slip away, as though it was being swallowed by the night sky. What was once a vibrant, bustling metropolis now looked like a dream fading into the distance. The transition was so surreal, so fluid, that Emma could hardly comprehend what was happening. It was as though they were moving between worlds, one fading into oblivion, and another, something unknown, slowly coming into focus. As they climbed higher, the sky outside shifted too. No longer was it the deep navy blue of a typical Parisian night. The stars, which had always been distant and unreachable from the ground, now seemed closer, brighter, filling the sky with an overwhelming sense of depth. The constellations she had only ever seen on maps or in books now twinkled directly above them, scattered across the vast, ink-black canvas. It was as though the caravan had lifted them into a space between the worlds, where the boundaries of time and place no longer existed. The soft clouds that once hovered over Paris were now within reach, swirling around them, bathed in the same otherworldly glow as the caravan itself. They floated lazily, like wisps of cotton candy, their edges glowing with soft, iridescent hues that reflected off the surfaces inside the caravan. Emma's heart beat faster, her mind spinning as she tried to take in the enormity of what was happening. The stars above them twinkled as though in rhythm with the caravan's gentle ascent, their light flickering in and out, creating the illusion that they were traveling through a cosmic sea, endless, infinite, and full of untold possibilities. There was no destination in sight, no end to the sky, no limit to where this journey could take them. It was as if they had been transported into a new realm, one that existed beyond time and space, where the ordinary rules of the world no longer applied. For a few moments, the two of them simply stood there, suspended in a quiet awe, gazing out at the ever-expanding universe that now surrounded them. Neither of them spoke. Words seemed inadequate to describe what they were experiencing. They were in the midst of something monumental, something that defied explanation. And as they looked out into the great unknown, they both felt an overwhelming sense of wonder and excitement, as if the entire universe was unfolding before them, inviting them to step forward into its mysteries. The caravan drifted higher and higher, ascending with a quiet, steady grace. At first, the skyline of Paris was a familiar, comforting sight, the twinkling lights of the cityscape stretching out like a blanket of stars on the earth. But as they rose, the lights began to fade, shrinking into distant specks, until the grandeur of the Eiffel Tower and the twisting Seine were mere whispers of light beneath them. The city they had once known so intimately was now a hazy glow in the distance, as if they were slipping away from the very fabric of their reality. The stars above them, once far off and unreachable, now felt as if they were within arm's reach. They glittered brightly, twinkling like jewels scattered across the heavens, their brilliance magnified by the absence of light pollution, so much clearer and sharper than Emma had ever seen from Earth. It was as if the sky had been washed clean, revealing the vast expanse of the universe in all its glory. The stars seemed to pulse and shift, a silent dance of celestial bodies, as if inviting them to join in the cosmic rhythm. Around them, a mist had begun to form, ethereal and shimmering, swirling in soft spirals like the breath of the universe itself. The mist sparkled with a subtle glow, each droplet of vapor reflecting the light of the stars, creating the illusion of floating between galaxies. It wasn't a fog, but something more profound, more otherworldly. The air felt like it was alive, humming with energy, alive with secrets that no one had ever dared to discover. Each wisp of mist that passed by them seemed to carry with it the essence of distant worlds, of places beyond comprehension, of journeys waiting to be taken. The sound around them was minimal, but present. The soft hum of the caravan's engines was like a lullaby, a gentle, constant vibration that reverberated through the floor and up into their bones. It wasn't a mechanical sound, more like the hum of the earth itself, or the gentle pulse of a heart beating in sync with the cosmos. It was soothing, almost meditative, as though the caravan was in perfect harmony with the universe, part of a much larger, unseen rhythm. The air inside the caravan had shifted, too. It was cool, but not cold, and there was something remarkably fresh about it. It smelled like lavender, sweet and calming, the kind of fragrance that lingered gently in the air, soothing the senses. But there was also something else, something more earthy, more grounding. The scent of fresh pine mingled with the lavender, like a forest in the early morning after a rainstorm, the kind of clean, invigorating air that made you feel alive with every breath. It filled her lungs, and with each inhale, Emma felt like she was breathing in the very essence of the stars themselves. The scent was so vivid, so real, that for a moment she could almost forget where she was. It felt as if they had transcended space and time, had stepped into a dimension where the air itself carried the whispers of faraway places, of forgotten memories. The stars, the mist, the soft hum of the caravan. Everything was a dream woven together, a place between worlds, where the ordinary was forgotten, and the extraordinary was all that remained. "This is unreal," Emma whispered, her voice almost lost in the vastness around them. The words left her lips in a reverent hush, as if speaking too loudly might break the spell they had fallen under. She turned to Lucas, her eyes wide, trying to find some sort of confirmation in his expression, some understanding of what was happening to them. But there was only silence between them, no need for words. The feeling of awe, of wonder, was so palpable that it filled every inch of the space between them, binding them together in this shared moment of disbelief. The deeper they rose into the starry expanse, the more Emma felt that they were not just traveling through space. They were traveling through time, through dimensions, through the very essence of existence. Every second felt stretched, distorted, as though they were living in a moment that was both fleeting and eternal. The sky above them was infinite, vast, stretching out forever in every direction, and yet, it felt like they had stepped into a pocket of reality that existed outside of time. There was no beginning, no end, just an endless now. As they floated in this suspended space, Emma felt both small and infinite at the same time. The vastness of the universe that surrounded them made her feel insignificant, like a single grain of sand lost in an endless desert. But in the same breath, it made her feel connected to everything, to every star, every planet, every life that had ever existed. It was as if she could feel the pulse of the universe beneath her feet, a gentle thrum that resonated deep within her chest. This was no longer just a journey. It was an experience that transcended everything she had ever known. With every passing second, Emma felt more immersed in the quiet magic that surrounded them, as if the caravan had transported them into a realm where the boundaries between dreams and reality had dissolved completely. There was no longer any sense of time, no sense of limitation. They were free, free to explore this new world, to dive into the unknown, to discover the impossible. The stars continued to shine brightly above, their light growing more and more intense as the caravan floated higher. The mist sparkled in response, like a million tiny diamonds scattered across the universe. And as Emma gazed out at the endless expanse before her, she couldn't help but wonder, what else was out there, just beyond their reach? What other worlds awaited them, hidden in the depths of the universe? And perhaps most of all, what incredible adventure had they just stumbled upon? Just then, the caravan, which had been drifting so gracefully through the starry expanse, began to shift its course. With a subtle tilt, it veered toward an island in the distance, one that seemed to materialize out of the very mist surrounding them. The island was small, but it held an undeniable presence, silent and mysterious, as though it had been waiting for them all along. At first, the mist enveloping it looked like a gentle fog, soft and translucent, but as they drew closer, it began to take on a strange, otherworldly quality. The mist was thick in places, swirling with an almost deliberate motion, as if it were alive. It wasn't the kind of fog you'd encounter on Earth. No, this felt different, ancient, as though the island itself was shrouded in secrets that had been kept hidden for eons. The mist seemed to pulse and shift, as though something beneath the surface was watching them, waiting for their arrival. As the caravan glided closer, the outline of the island began to emerge more clearly from the haze. It was small but strangely beautiful. The land was lush and vibrant, with dense trees that seemed to shimmer in the soft light from the caravan. But the trees were not ordinary. Some were twisted and gnarled, their branches reaching out like dark fingers into the mist, as if they were beckoning the travelers forward. The colors of the island were vivid, almost surreal, greener blues and soft purples that appeared to glow faintly against the backdrop of the starry sky. The land was dotted with strange rock formations that seemed to rise from the earth like ancient sentinels, watching over the island in silent guard. Some rocks were smooth and rounded, while others were jagged and sharp, forming eerie shapes that seemed to shift as the caravan moved closer. The light from the caravan flickered off the stones, creating strange shadows that danced across the island, making the place seem alive in a way that was unsettling yet mesmerizing. There was something about this island that made Emma's heart race, but not in fear, more in anticipation. The air around it felt thick with mystery, as if the very fabric of reality here was different, more fragile, or perhaps more potent. It was a place where the rules of the world seemed to bend and twist, where logic had little place, and anything could happen. The island felt inviting, drawing them in with an almost magnetic pull, yet there was an undercurrent of unease that wrapped itself around Emma's thoughts. It was as though the island was a crossroads, a place where the boundary between the known and the unknown was thin, waiting to reveal something hidden just beneath its surface. The mist seemed to deepen as they approached, thickening with each passing second. It was no longer a gentle haze, but a swirling cloud that seemed to embrace the island, obscuring parts of it, making it seem distant and unreachable. The deeper into the mist they ventured, the more Emma felt the sense that they were entering a place not meant for ordinary people. A place that existed on the edge of dreams, where the line between reality and fantasy blurred. Lucas leaned closer to her, his voice low and filled with wonder. "Do you feel that? There's something strange about this place." Emma nodded, her eyes locked on the island ahead. "It's like we're crossing into another world, one that's been hidden away. Like we're stepping into a dream that's too real to be true." The mist swirled around them now, thickening as the island grew nearer. It moved in eerie patterns, almost as if it were alive, like a breathing organism that was shaping the very air around them. Emma couldn't tear her eyes away from it. There was something strangely hypnotic about the mist, drawing her in, making her forget the world they had just left behind. The stars above them flickered as though caught in a strange current of energy, their light muted by the heavy cloud that surrounded them. The caravan moved with a slow, almost cautious grace as they neared the island, as though it too was aware of the strange forces at play. With every inch closer they came, Emma could feel her pulse quicken. It was a mixture of excitement and apprehension, a cocktail of emotions that she couldn't quite untangle. This was no ordinary place, no ordinary island. It was a place where the rules of reality seemed suspended, and every breath felt like it was charged with possibility. The island was alive with something she couldn't name, something that called to her, drawing her in with an irresistible force. For a moment, Emma wondered if they should turn back, if they were venturing too far into the unknown. But the feeling of being drawn forward was overpowering, like a force that she couldn't resist, one that she had no intention of resisting. The island was beckoning, and in her heart, she knew they had to go. There was something here, something important, something they were meant to find. "Are you ready?" Lucas asked, his voice soft, filled with the same wonder and uncertainty that filled Emma's chest. Emma didn't answer right away. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. This was no simple adventure. This was something far bigger, far deeper. She took a deep breath, her eyes still locked on the island, and nodded. "Let's see what's waiting for us." And as they drifted closer to the mist-covered island, she couldn't shake the feeling that their journey had just taken a turn into the realm of the impossible. But it was a turn they were both ready to take, and the mysteries that lay ahead could no longer be ignored. The caravan drifted closer, its lights flickering as it neared the island, casting eerie shadows across the mist-covered landscape. The island seemed to breathe with an unnatural life, the fog shifting and swirling in patterns that Emma couldn't quite understand. The closer they got, the more the atmosphere thickened, as if the very air around them was charged with something ancient and powerful. The distant hum of the caravan seemed to merge with the strange whispers that floated through the trees, sending a shiver up Emma's spine. It felt as though the land itself was alive, watching them, waiting for them to step onto it. When the caravan finally stopped, hovering just above the ground, the door slowly creaked open, releasing a breath of cool, misty air. The moment Emma stepped out, her feet sank slightly into the ground, and she looked down to see that the soil was made up of a soft, silvery dust. It sparkled faintly, reflecting the eerie light from the caravan as though it were dust from a forgotten star. The ground felt solid beneath her feet, but there was something unsettling about the texture, as if it was soft yet ancient, a place where time itself had stood still. The air here was different, heavier, filled with the scent of something damp and earthy, mixed with the faintest trace of wildflowers. But there was something else, something she couldn't quite place. A metallic tang, sharp and unfamiliar, hung in the air like a warning. She breathed it in, wondering what this place truly was. A few steps onto the island, and Emma felt a coldness creeping into her skin. The chill wasn't just from the cool mist. It seemed to come from the very ground beneath her, as though the island itself was holding its breath, as if it wasn't entirely welcoming. The fog was thick now, curling around their ankles, making each step forward feel like a plunge into the unknown. Every now and then, she would catch a glimpse of the trees through the mist, their branches twisting like skeletal hands reaching out for them, and the whispers grew louder. "Do you hear that?" Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the chill in the air crawling down her spine. The sounds were faint at first, just whispers on the edge of hearing, as though the wind itself were speaking in a language she didn't understand. But as they moved further into the island, the whispers became clearer, though no less haunting. The voices seemed to echo from every direction, impossible to trace. They were not the usual sounds of nature. No birds, no wind, just whispers, soft and cryptic, laced with an underlying tone of urgency, like the island itself had something to say. Lucas stopped beside her, his hand instinctively reaching out to hold hers. His grip was tight, almost protective. "I do," he replied, his voice low and laced with an edge of tension. "Let's stay close to the caravan." His eyes scanned the foggy landscape, alert to every rustle in the mist, every distant creak of a branch. There was something unnerving about this place, something he couldn't quite explain, but it set every nerve in his body on edge. Emma nodded, but as she did, she couldn't shake the feeling that the island itself was alive, watching them. The fog was growing thicker, swirling around them in patterns that didn't make sense. It moved with an intelligence, like it was deliberately guiding them, herding them towards something, or away from it. She could feel the temperature drop even further as they stepped further into the island. Each step felt heavier, as though the earth beneath her feet was reluctant to let her pass, as if it was warning her to turn back. The soft, silvery dust beneath their feet crunched as they moved, the sound oddly sharp in the eerie silence. But the whispers continued, now seeming to rise up from the trees themselves, as if the wind were carrying voices from deep within the island. They were faint, almost too faint to understand, but there was a chilling familiarity to them, like they were calling out to Emma, to Lucas, to anyone who dared listen. She looked around, but the fog and trees obscured everything. Shapes seemed to shift in the mist, but when she tried to focus, they vanished. The island felt vast, but also confining, an endless maze of whispers, trees, and fog, all closing in around them. The air was thick with the weight of secrets, and Emma couldn't help but feel that they were being drawn deeper into something far beyond their understanding. The mist began to curl more tightly around them, wrapping itself around their legs like an unseen force. Emma felt as though the fog itself was alive, a creature whose tendrils sought to pull them deeper into the heart of the island. She tightened her grip on Lucas's hand, sensing that they were no longer visitors here. They were intruders, wandering into a place that didn't welcome them. "We should be careful," Lucas murmured, his voice barely audible over the whispers. His eyes darted from one tree to the next, every motion amplified in the thickening mist. "This place. It's not like anywhere we've ever been before." Emma swallowed, trying to steady her nerves. "I know, but we have to keep going. There's something here, Lucas. I feel it." The words left her lips, but even as she said them, doubt crept in, as if she were convincing herself more than him. The fog seemed to respond to her words, swirling faster around them, as if in agreement or protest. As they stood there, the sound of the whispers grew louder, clearer, as though they were rising from the very roots of the island. But it wasn't just the wind. This time, Emma swore she could hear a voice, a single, soft murmur, as if someone or something were speaking directly to her. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The voice was distant but unmistakable, and it seemed to call her name. "Emma." They walked cautiously, each step sinking slightly into the soft, silvery dust beneath their feet. The air grew heavier, and the fog seemed to close in around them with each passing moment, making it harder to see more than a few feet ahead. The whispers continued, now more pronounced, their voices swelling in volume, yet still distant and indecipherable. It felt as though the very earth beneath them was alive, vibrating with an ancient rhythm. Emma could feel the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end as the sounds of the island seemed to pulse with a strange, rhythmic energy. The path ahead remained unclear, almost deliberately so. There was no clear trail, no sign of where to go. It was as if the fog itself was shifting, creating and hiding pathways at its own whim. Yet, despite the disorienting surroundings, Emma felt an undeniable pull toward the thickest part of the mist. It wasn't fear that tugged at her chest, but something deeper, a sense that they were being guided, or perhaps even beckoned. She couldn't explain it, but every part of her wanted to follow it, to discover what lay beyond the veil of fog. Her breath was shallow, her heart racing with an odd blend of excitement and unease. Lucas, too, seemed caught in the invisible force that drew them onward. He walked silently beside her, his gaze darting around nervously, though he didn't slow his pace. The further they ventured, the more the whispers grew in volume, rising and falling like an eerie chant that seemed to surround them from all sides. And yet, despite their growing intensity, there was no clarity, no sense of direction to the voices. It was as if the whispers themselves were part of the fog, shaped by it, carried by it. The soft rustle of the trees was the only other sound accompanying their steps, but even that felt muted, as though the island itself was absorbing all the noise, only allowing fragments of sound to reach their ears. The air smelled faintly of damp earth, tinged with the fragrance of something sweet and unfamiliar. A flower they couldn't place, perhaps a part of the island's own secret ecosystem. The further they walked, the thicker the fog became, enveloping them in a dreamlike haze that dulled their senses. Yet the pull was stronger than ever, and Emma couldn't ignore it. Suddenly, as if the island itself had parted to reveal its hidden treasure, the fog ahead of them began to thin. Emma and Lucas slowed, eyes widening as the mist cleared, revealing a strange clearing bathed in a soft, otherworldly light. The ground here was different, more solid, yet still soft to the touch. It was as if the earth itself was offering them a safe place to stand, a moment of clarity in the otherwise disorienting landscape. The air was less oppressive here, though still thick with a kind of silent energy that made Emma feel as though the ground beneath her feet was alive with history. And there, in the center of the clearing, hovering just above the ground, were figures, no beings, glowing with a soft, ethereal light. They floated gently in the air, their forms mist-like and translucent, yet their outlines were distinct, as if they had been formed from the very fog that surrounded them. Each figure seemed to pulse with its own quiet rhythm, glowing faintly like the pale light of distant stars, yet they were close enough to touch. They weren't solid, but they weren't quite illusions either. They shimmered, shifting ever so slightly, as if they were made of light and mist woven together. The figures didn't speak, but their presence was unmistakable. A calming warmth seemed to emanate from them, washing over Emma and Lucas as they stood there, frozen in awe. It wasn't the warmth of the sun, but something deeper. Something that made Emma's chest feel lighter, as though the weight of all her fears and doubts had been lifted, even if just for a moment. The figures hovered in complete silence, yet their mere existence felt like a kind of language, a communication without words. Their shapes were gentle, with rounded edges that seemed almost human in their softness, yet their faces, if one could call them faces, were obscured, as though hidden behind an unseen veil. They didn't seem threatening, nor did they seem entirely welcoming, but there was a serenity about them that made Emma's heart race with curiosity rather than fear. It was as though they were offering something, not asking for anything in return. Lucas stepped forward slowly, his hand gripping Emma's a little tighter. He glanced at her, his eyes wide with disbelief, but there was no question in his gaze. They had come this far, and the figures, though strange, didn't feel like a threat. Instead, they radiated a peaceful energy, almost as if they were waiting for something from them. The air was thick with unspoken understanding. Emma could feel her breath slow as she took in the sight before her, the shimmering figures filling the clearing with their quiet, peaceful presence. "Are they real?" Lucas asked in a whisper, his voice barely audible in the stillness of the clearing. Emma didn't know how to answer. She wasn't sure what was real anymore. All she knew was that she could feel them, feel their presence in the air, in the very space around her. It was as if the world had shifted and, for just a moment, she and Lucas were part of something greater, something ancient, something that transcended the boundaries of what they thought possible. The figures didn't move, but their presence was undeniable. They hung there like stars made flesh, and Emma couldn't help but feel that she was meant to be here. That this strange, otherworldly encounter, was the answer to the feeling she'd had all along that there was something waiting for them in the mist, something far beyond what they had imagined when they stepped into the caravan. And in that moment, surrounded by the soft glow of the figures and the stillness of the mist, Emma knew their adventure had just begun. Emma's heart thudded in her chest, her breath shallow as she tried to process what she was seeing. Her eyes moved back and forth between the ethereal figures and the glowing stone at the center of the clearing. The very air around it seemed to vibrate, shimmering as though it was alive with unseen forces, pulses of energy that made her feel both small and yet part of something vast and powerful. Her mind raced with questions, but only one broke free from the storm of thoughts. "What is this place?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper, as though speaking too loudly might disrupt the delicate balance of the strange scene before her. The words hung in the air, almost swallowed by the thick silence. For a moment, it felt as though nothing would respond. But then, one of the glowing figures, its form still shifting with the soft, foggy mist, moved. Its motion was fluid, graceful, almost like it was gliding rather than walking. Slowly, deliberately, the figure extended one of its shimmering hands toward a large pulsing stone at the heart of the clearing. The stone was unlike anything Emma had ever seen. It seemed to be made of a material that wasn't quite stone, more like a translucent crystal that caught the light of the figures and reflected it in colors she couldn't even name. Hues of violet, deep blue, and gold, all swirling together in an ethereal dance. The stone itself wasn't just glowing, it seemed to hum, its very presence filling the air with a soft, electric energy. As the figure's hand hovered above it, the stone seemed to pulse in rhythm with the figure, as if they were connected in some way. The mist surrounding the stone thickened and shimmered, wrapping itself around the base of the stone like a living thing, as though it was part of its very essence. It wasn't just light, it was an energy, a force that radiated outward, filling the space with an intensity that Emma could feel in her chest. Every breath she took felt charged, as though the very air was infused with something ancient and powerful. She couldn't look away from the stone. Emma could feel a strange pull in her chest, a gentle tug that seemed to beckon her toward the stone, as if the island itself was calling her. She took a hesitant step forward, and the mist around her feet seemed to respond, swirling at her ankles, urging her onward. The figures remained silent, but their presence felt more intense now, as though they were waiting for something. The heart of the island, a soft voice echoed through the clearing, cutting through the stillness. It was the voice of the caravan, the same soothing yet mysterious tone they had heard before. The words were clear, but their meaning seemed to stretch beyond their simple form. To return, you must offer something of yourself. The voice seemed to reverberate in the air, carrying with it a sense of weight, an ancient promise, a demand, a truth that Emma couldn't fully grasp. She felt her pulse quicken, a mixture of fear and curiosity twisting inside her. What could it mean to offer something of herself? What would they need to give up, or what price would they have to pay to return? The figure's hand continued to hover over the stone, its glowing fingertips tracing patterns in the air. Emma felt as though the stone, the island, and the figures were all part of something beyond her understanding, something tied to forces far greater than she could imagine. The feeling was overwhelming, like standing at the edge of an abyss, unable to look away but terrified of what lay beneath. Lucas stood beside her, just as still, his eyes fixed on the stone, the same questions written across his face. They had come this far, followed the caravan into the unknown, but now the weight of their choice hung heavy in the air. She could sense his hesitation, his uncertainty mirroring her own. What did it mean to offer something of yourself? Was it a sacrifice? A test? The voice continued, its tone soft but urgent, as though urging them to understand the gravity of the decision before them. The heart of the island beats with the energy of all who have passed through. It is the source of all things here. Only by giving something of yourself will you be able to find your way back. It is not a simple trade, it is an exchange of what you hold dear. The words seemed to echo in Emma's mind, each one sinking deeper, carrying with it the weight of their meaning. What did she hold dear? What was she willing to give up for the chance to return to the world they knew? The question hung in the air, unanswered. And as she stood there, transfixed by the glowing stone and the figures surrounding them, Emma felt a deep sense of connection to the island, an unspoken bond that made her heart race and her mind swirl with possibilities. And yet, the answer remained elusive. What would they give? What was this place really asking of them? Lucas and Emma exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with a mix of confusion and concern. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken questions, their minds racing to comprehend the meaning behind the strange voice's words. Neither of them had expected anything like this. The caravan, the island, the glowing stone. Everything had felt surreal, but now the gravity of the situation was setting in. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she searched Lucas's face for some sign of clarity, but all she saw was the same uncertainty reflected back at her. They had entered this adventure together, curious about what they might discover, but now it felt like they were standing at the precipice of something much larger than either of them could have imagined. What does that mean? Emma finally asked, her voice trembling just slightly, though she tried to hide it. She didn't know what to make of the words. Their meaning seemed so simple, yet so impossibly complex, like a riddle she couldn't quite solve. The pull toward the stone in the center of the clearing intensified, as though the island itself was waiting for her to make a choice, to take a step forward. But to give? To offer something? What did she even have to offer? The voice, which seemed to fill the space around them with its mysterious energy, echoed once again. It was calm but firm, its tone unwavering. Only by giving can you find your way back. The words resonated in the silence, like a whisper carried on the wind. Emma's mind was racing. What did they need to give? Was it something physical? Emotional? Was it a sacrifice? And if it was, what was the cost of returning? She wanted to scream the questions out loud, but the sense of reverence in the air kept her quiet, as though speaking too loudly would break the fragile connection she was beginning to feel to this strange, otherworldly place. Lucas's voice cut through her thoughts, soft and uncertain. But, what do we give? We don't even know what this place is. How can we just offer something of ourselves? He shook his head, his hand tightening around hers, as though grounding himself in the touch of something familiar. It's like, we're supposed to make a choice without knowing the rules of the game. Emma turned her attention back to the stone. The longer she stared at it, the more its glow seemed to pulse in time with her heartbeat. The figures around them, still hovering in the air like silent sentinels, remained unmoving, offering no further guidance. It was as though they were waiting for them to understand, waiting for them to make the next move. Her thoughts tumbled over each other, trying to make sense of the words they had heard. The idea of offering something felt both intimate and terrifying. Could it be something as simple as a promise? A memory? Or perhaps it was something more, something deeply personal, something they had to give up in order to return. She felt a chill run down her spine as the weight of the unknown pressed in on her. The voice spoke again, but this time its tone was softer, almost compassionate, as though it understood the turmoil they were feeling. What you give is not for me, but for you. The journey back requires understanding what you truly value. Only in giving can you find your true path forward. Emma looked at Lucas, his face pale, his expression a mirror of her own thoughts. They both knew the stakes had just become higher, but they couldn't yet understand what the price of returning home would be. Was it a physical item they had to part with? Or something more intangible? Something tied to their hearts, their minds, or even their souls? The figure in front of them seemed to lean slightly toward the stone, its form shimmering with an ethereal glow as though it too was connected to the stone's energy. For a moment, the entire world around them seemed to pulse in time with the stone, as if the land itself was breathing with them, waiting for them to make their choice. Lucas swallowed hard. But we don't even know what's at the other end of this. What if we give and we're never able to return? What if we're stuck here forever? His voice trailed off, and Emma could see the fear flickering in his eyes. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown, but the fear of losing everything: their lives, their choices, their future. Emma stepped closer to him, squeezing his hand in reassurance, though she, too, was struggling to grasp the meaning of it all. She could feel the tension between them, the uncertainty that hung thick in the air, but beneath it was something else. Something deeper, something that spoke to her on an emotional level. They had come this far together, and whatever this journey was, they would face it together too. Still, the voice echoed again, like a constant reminder, reverberating in the back of her mind. What you give is not for me, but for you. Only by giving can you find your way back. As the words settled in her mind, Emma began to wonder if this was the key to understanding everything. Perhaps it wasn't about a physical object at all. Perhaps it was about understanding what they truly valued, what they would be willing to sacrifice in order to return to the world they knew. Could it be that the answer was something hidden deep within them, waiting to be uncovered? She stood frozen, caught in the web of uncertainty. The island, the stone, the ethereal figures. They all seemed to be waiting for her to find her answer. But what would she give? What did she hold dear enough to offer in exchange for a chance to return? What could she, or they, sacrifice to unlock the way back to everything they had known? With a deep breath, Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest as she moved closer to the glowing stone. The air around it seemed to shimmer with energy, the light from the stone casting soft, ethereal shadows on the ground. Her fingers trembled as they reached out, and just before they made contact, she felt a strange pull, as if the stone itself were calling to her, drawing her in. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, a fleeting moment of doubt tugging at her mind, but then she let go of the uncertainty, taking the final step. The moment her fingers touched the stone, it felt like the world shifted. A warmth surged through her, as if the very air around her had been charged with life. It wasn't just heat. It was a profound, comforting warmth, like the embrace of something ancient and wise, offering both solace and understanding. She felt the tension in her body melt away, the knots of worry and fear that had been tightly wound inside her for so long, slowly unwinding. Her breath slowed, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma felt a deep sense of peace settle in her chest, as though all the chaos she had been carrying had dissipated into the air. It was as if everything she had been searching for, the elusive feeling of belonging, the clarity that had always seemed just out of reach, the connection she had longed for both to herself and to the world around her, had found her all at once, in the space between her fingertips and the glowing stone. The sensation was almost overwhelming, as though the universe itself had exhaled, and in that exhale, she was finally seen. Her thoughts blurred, replaced by a profound stillness that seemed to expand outward. The island, the mist, even the strange figures hovering nearby, they all faded into the background, their presence no longer looming or frightening. Instead, they felt like gentle whispers in the wind, distant yet familiar, as though she had known this feeling all along but had never truly understood it until now. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing the warmth to spread throughout her entire body. In this space, there was no fear, no confusion, no urgency, just the quiet hum of peace, like a song that had been playing all along but had only just now reached her ears. It was as though every part of her had been rearranged, finding its rightful place within the larger tapestry of the world. Behind her, she felt Lucas step closer. His presence was like a grounding force, solid and constant, and before she knew it, his hand was resting gently over hers, joining her in this shared moment of connection. His touch, though light, seemed to amplify the sensation, making the warmth grow even stronger, as if the two of them together were amplifying the calmness that had settled around them. The heat between their hands spread outward, wrapping them both in a sense of quiet. Emma could feel Lucas's breath beside her, his pulse steady and calm, mirroring her own. For a moment, they simply stood there, side by side, neither speaking, just absorbing the profound serenity that surrounded them. The world outside seemed distant, unreal even. They had stepped into a space where time felt irrelevant, where the future and past were mere concepts, fleeting and insubstantial. In this stillness, Emma realized something she hadn't been able to put into words before. She had spent so much of her life searching for answers, looking for something. Someone, to fill the gaps inside her, always feeling like something was missing. But now, with her hand on the stone and Lucas beside her, she felt a deep knowing, as if the answers were already inside her. It was the kind of knowing that couldn't be described, only experienced. She didn't need to search anymore. The connection, the peace, the clarity, everything she had been chasing had always been here, within her reach, if only she had been willing to stop, to listen, to feel. She exhaled slowly, a breath she didn't realize she had been holding, and in that exhale, she let go of everything that had been weighing her down. The need to prove herself, to figure it all out, to force answers into the empty spaces. She released it all, and for the first time in a long while, she felt light. Lucas's hand tightened just slightly over hers, a silent acknowledgement of the moment they were sharing. He didn't need to say anything. He, too, was caught in the pull of the stone's warmth, and like Emma, he was beginning to understand something fundamental, something beyond words. Together, in this stillness, they didn't need answers or explanations. They only needed each other, and the peace that came with simply being present. For the first time in their journey, they both felt like they were exactly where they were supposed to be, and it was enough. More than enough. The warmth spread until it filled the space around them, as if the island, the mist, and the figures were all part of this moment, all part of the same quiet revelation. The air around them shimmered, not with magic or illusion, but with truth. And in that truth, they found something more valuable than anything they had come here to search for. They found home. As they stood there, hand in hand, everything else around them began to fade, as though the world itself had recognized the profound shift within them. The whispers, which had once seemed so urgent and mysterious, grew quieter, their voices softening until they were nothing more than distant echoes. The fog, which had surrounded them like a thick veil, began to dissipate, retreating into the night like a memory fading with the dawn. The ethereal figures that had hovered around them, their presence both comforting and strange, slowly melted into the air, their glow dimming until there was nothing left but the cool, quiet night and the glowing stone that now stood like a beacon of stillness. The stone itself seemed to pulse softly, its glow flickering with a gentle rhythm, as though it too was in sync with their newfound peace. In this moment, Emma and Lucas were alone with the stone, the vast, silent island, and the infinite sky above them. Time seemed to stretch, as if they had entered a space where the concept of minutes and hours held no sway. The calm that enveloped them was all-encompassing, a silence that felt sacred, as though they had been granted a rare glimpse into something greater than themselves. The caravan's soft hum, which had been a mere background presence before, now returned, its sound more familiar, more grounding. The gentle vibrations seemed to pull them back, drawing them toward the place they had come from, but it wasn't a forceful pull. It was gentle, like the soft tug of a current guiding them home. Reluctantly, they turned away from the stone and the mist, knowing that their journey on the island was coming to an end. As they walked back toward the caravan, the air felt different. It was still thick with the remnants of the mist, but now there was a weightlessness to it, as though they had left some part of themselves behind in the clearing, a part that would stay there, always connected to the island, the stone, and the serenity they had found. The closer they got to the caravan, the more Emma felt a strange sense of gratitude wash over her. There was no overwhelming need to speak, no desperate desire to process the experience in the moment. They simply walked, side by side, as if they both understood that sometimes, silence was enough. They didn't need to explain what had just happened or search for meaning. It was already there, inside them, in the peace that now filled their hearts. When they reached the door of the caravan, it opened with a soft creak, as though welcoming them back. The same warmth they had felt earlier seemed to radiate from within, wrapping around them as they stepped inside. The door closed behind them with a gentle thud, sealing them back inside the familiar space, yet everything felt different now. The air inside the caravan was charged with a soft, unspoken energy, as though the experience they had just shared had infused the very walls with something intangible yet undeniable. They both took a seat, the quiet hum of the caravan's movement filling the space. As the caravan began its slow ascent, lifting gently off the ground, Emma felt an odd sense of nostalgia tug at her heart. Paris was still there, waiting for them, but it felt distant now, like a place they had known in another lifetime. The lights of the city twinkled far below, but it seemed like a dream, fading with every passing second as the caravan rose higher, carrying them away from the island, from the mist, and from the place where they had unlocked something deep inside themselves. The caravan's descent into the quiet night felt almost too serene, like the world itself was honoring their journey. As they soared higher, leaving the island behind, Emma looked at Lucas. There were no words needed between them. They didn't need to explain what had happened or what they had experienced. It was there, in the stillness of the moment, in the peace that now filled the space between them. They simply held each other's gaze, both of them quietly acknowledging that they had changed. Something had shifted, something had been unlocked within them. The peace they felt wasn't just an external calm, it was an internal transformation, one that neither of them had expected, but both had needed. As the caravan continued its slow, graceful descent toward Paris, Emma closed her eyes, feeling the hum of the caravan beneath her, and she whispered softly, almost to herself, "We found it, haven't we?" Lucas squeezed her hand, his voice barely a murmur in the quiet cabin. "Yeah," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "We found it." And in that moment, as the caravan drifted back toward the city they had known so well, both Emma and Lucas felt a deep, lasting peace settle inside them, an understanding that they were no longer searching, no longer yearning for something outside of themselves. The journey had brought them to the one place they had always been meant to find, themselves together. As they glided back toward the glowing city of Paris, the familiar sights of the city began to reappear, but nothing felt the same. The skyline, once sharp and bustling, now appeared softened by the night's quiet magic. The lights of the Eiffel Tower twinkled, but there was a subtle difference in the way they shimmered, as if the tower itself was quietly celebrating their return. The streets, which had always felt alive with energy, now seemed to glow with a warmth that went beyond the usual city lights, as if the very essence of Paris had embraced them, welcoming them back with open arms. The air felt lighter, infused with a peacefulness that Emma couldn't quite explain. It was as if every breath she took was filled with a kind of clarity she had never known before. The world outside seemed to hum with possibility, but this time, it wasn't the rush of daily life that called to her. It was something gentler, more enduring, like the quiet murmur of a river flowing through the stillness of the night. "Do you feel it?" Emma asked, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loudly might disrupt the fragile peace that had settled around them. She wasn't just asking about the city, she was asking about the shift within herself, the quiet transformation that had taken place in the silence between the stars and the mist. Her words hung in the air for a moment, mingling with the soft hum of the caravan as it continued its descent. Lucas turned to her, his eyes reflecting the same stillness she felt inside. He didn't need to say anything at first. He simply nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corners of his lips, as though he, too, could feel the same subtle shift in the world around them. It wasn't just the city that had changed. It was them. Something deep inside had opened up, a space that had been waiting for them all along. "Yeah," Lucas finally spoke, his voice low, almost reverent, as though he, too, was trying not to disturb the tranquility of the moment. "It's like everything's softer now. Like the city's breathing with us, instead of just around us." Emma smiled at his words, grateful for the way he understood without needing to ask. She leaned back, her eyes closed for a moment as the caravan drifted lower, drawing closer to the familiar streets of Paris. She felt as though a weight had been lifted, something she hadn't even realized she was carrying. The city, once overwhelming in its endless motion, now felt like a gentle lullaby, with every building, every street, and every light quietly contributing to the symphony of calm that filled the air. The streets below appeared different too, as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a deeper beauty. The people walking below, the couples strolling along the riverbanks, the musicians playing their soft melodies in hidden corners. They all seemed to be part of a grand, unspoken harmony. The world felt somehow more present, more alive in its simplicity, and Emma could sense the connection between everything, the people, the lights, the sky, and herself. It was as though the island, the mist, and the stone had opened her eyes to the magic that always existed, but had been too busy to notice before. Lucas squeezed her hand, his fingers warm against her skin. "It's like we've been given a second chance to see it all," he said, his voice soft but filled with awe. His words seemed to echo Emma's own thoughts. as though they had shared the same realization in that quiet moment. It's the same Paris, but it feels new, like we've never truly seen it before. Emma nodded, her heart swelling with a quiet kind of joy, the kind that didn't need explanation. She knew exactly what he meant. Paris had always been magical, but now, it felt like a place where anything was possible, where dreams and reality intertwined, where the ordinary became extraordinary, and where the simple act of being present in the moment was enough. As the caravan descended further, the lights of the city growing ever brighter, Emma felt a deep gratitude for everything they had experienced. She realized that their adventure wasn't just about the mysterious island or the glowing stone, it was about the transformation within themselves. Paris, with all its history, energy, and charm, was still the same, but they had been forever changed. They had discovered something within themselves that couldn't be undone, something that would stay with them long after the caravan touched the ground. She opened her eyes and looked at Lucas, her heart full. "I don't think I'll ever look at this city the same way again." He smiled back, a knowing look in his eyes. "Me neither." The words were simple, but they carried a weight of understanding that went beyond explanation. They had both seen Paris in a new light, not through the lens of sightseeing or adventure, but through the lens of their own journey, their shared experience, and the quiet peace they had found together. And as the caravan continued its descent, bringing them back to the glowing streets of Paris, Emma felt a sense of homecoming, not just to the city, but to herself, to Lucas, and to the life they were about to live in this new, softer world they had discovered. Lucas nodded, his eyes closed for a moment, savoring the peace that hung in the air. "I do," he said softly, his voice almost reverent. "It's like the whole world has slowed down, like it's holding its breath just for us." They stood together for a long moment, their feet planted on the soft ground, as the world around them felt suspended in time. It wasn't just the stillness of the night or the quiet hum of the distant city. It was the feeling that the entire universe had paused for them, allowing them to savor this new reality they found themselves in. Emma could almost hear the rhythm of her own heartbeat syncing with the gentle flow of the Seine River, a steady pulse that seemed to echo in the very air around them. The soft glow of the city lights felt different now, warmer, softer, as though the entire landscape had been painted with a gentle brushstroke. The towering buildings, the streets that had once felt so busy and chaotic, now seemed to belong to a world that was perfectly in tune with the calmness that enveloped them. It was as if everything had been brought into perfect harmony, and they, too, were now part of that delicate balance. Emma squeezed Lucas's hand, her gaze drifting to the skyline, and she felt a sense of awe, a quiet recognition that everything around them was part of something greater, something beyond understanding. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel the weight of the world pressing down on her. The burdens that had once felt so heavy now seemed distant, insignificant. She felt light, as if she were floating just above the earth, untethered by the things that had once held her back. They walked slowly, hand in hand, their steps in sync with the stillness that had settled over the city. There were no words needed between them. The peace that surrounded them spoke volumes. They didn't need to rush, didn't need to hurry anywhere. There was no destination now, only the present moment, stretching out before them like an endless possibility. As they reached the edge of the river, the sound of the water lapping gently against the banks seemed to blend with the quiet hum of the city. The soft breeze carried the scent of the night, earthy, crisp, and fresh, and Emma closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. It was as though the air itself had been transformed, infused with the very essence of serenity. "Are we the same?" Emma asked, her voice soft and unsure, as she turned to look up at Lucas. There was a vulnerability in her question, a quiet longing to understand what had changed between them, what had shifted within them both. It was as though she was asking not just about the adventure they had experienced, but about the deeper transformation that had occurred inside them. Her eyes met his, searching for an answer, not just in his words, but in the way his expression had softened, in the way his gaze lingered on hers. She had always felt that Paris held a kind of magic, but tonight, it felt like the entire city was a mirror, reflecting something deeper, something that had always been there but had been hidden beneath the surface. Lucas paused, considering her question carefully. His brow furrowed for a moment, and he looked out at the river, his eyes lost in thought. There was a moment of stillness between them, a moment that stretched longer than the silence between two people who were in perfect understanding. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling slowly, as if he too was taking in the vastness of everything that had just unfolded. "I think," he started, his voice steady and thoughtful, "we're different, but in the best way possible. We're not the same because we've let go of something. We've learned something, not just about the world but about ourselves." He paused again, his eyes meeting hers with a tenderness that made her heart swell. "It's like we've unlocked a part of ourselves that was always there waiting. And now we're more us than we've ever been." Emma's heart fluttered at his words, and she felt a rush of warmth flood her chest. She understood. What he said made perfect sense. They had both traveled a long way, but not just through Paris, or even through that mysterious island. They had traveled inward, discovering parts of themselves they hadn't known existed. They had discovered not just a new adventure, but a new way of seeing, a new way of being. She squeezed his hand tighter, a soft smile spreading across her face. "I think you're right. We're different, but maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it means we've grown. We've changed, but for the better." Lucas nodded, his smile matching hers. It was the kind of smile that spoke of understanding, of shared experiences that didn't need to be explained. They didn't need to say anything else because, in that moment, they both knew the answer to Emma's question. They were different, yes, but they had discovered something within themselves, within each other, that made everything seem clearer. The world, the city, their relationship. Everything felt like it was aligned in a way it never had before. And for the first time in a long time, Emma felt at peace with the uncertainty of the future. Because no matter what lay ahead, she knew she and Lucas had found something that would stay with them forever. The caravan had brought them on a journey, not just through the skies and across mysterious islands, but deep within their hearts. And now, as they stood on the banks of the Seine, the city of Paris glowing softly around them, they realized that the true adventure had only just begun. This extended version deepens the reflection on their transformation and connection, emphasizing the emotional shift and growth they've experienced together. It builds the sense of peace and understanding between them as they come to terms with the changes they've undergone. "Let me know if you'd like further changes." "We are," Lucas replied, smiling softly, his eyes reflecting the same peaceful, almost dreamy quality that had settled over them. "But I think we've found something we didn't know we were looking for." Emma's gaze lingered on him, studying his expression as he spoke. There was something different about the way he said it, something that made her heart swell with emotion. It wasn't just the words, it was the quiet certainty in his voice, the calmness in the way he held himself. It was as if, in that moment, they had discovered a truth about themselves that had been hidden for so long, and it was finally coming to the surface. They continued walking through the quiet Paris streets, side by side, their footsteps almost soundless against the cobblestone streets. The city around them, usually so vibrant and bustling, now seemed to hum with a different energy, as though the entire city had taken a deep breath along with them. The gentle murmur of distant conversations, the faint sound of footsteps echoing down the empty alleyways. It all blended together, creating a peaceful, almost ethereal atmosphere. As they passed by the familiar landmarks of Paris, everything seemed softer, more intimate. The Eiffel Tower stood tall in the distance, its lights shimmering like a beacon in the night sky, but it no longer felt like the symbol of a bustling city. Instead, it felt like part of the dreamscape they had just left behind, a reminder of the world they had stepped away from and the new world they had discovered together. They didn't speak much, but the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was a comfortable, shared stillness, a quiet understanding that passed between them with every step. There was no need for words to explain what had just happened. They had both felt it, the transformation, the shift in their hearts. It was as if the island, the stone, and the figures had given them something intangible, something that couldn't be put into words. They had been given a glimpse into something greater, a sense of purpose, and a connection to each other and to the world around them. As they walked, Emma couldn't help but smile to herself. She had always believed in the magic of Paris, but tonight, that magic had felt real. Not in the way most people think of magic, spells or wishes granted, but in a deeper, more meaningful way. It was the kind of magic that came from within, the kind that allowed them to see the beauty in the ordinary and to find peace in the most unexpected places. It was the kind of magic that made her heart lighter, her spirit more attuned to the world, as if every step she took was part of a greater, more wondrous journey. Lucas looked over at her, his expression softening as if he could feel her thoughts without her needing to say a word. "You're thinking about it, aren't you?" he asked, his voice a gentle whisper in the quiet night. Emma nodded, her heart full. I am. It's just incredible. How everything can change in an instant. How we can change too. Lucas's hand brushed against hers, and for a moment, they paused in the middle of the street, letting the quiet night wrap around them like a soft blanket. The city seemed to fade into the background, and all that mattered was the space they shared, the unspoken bond that had grown stronger over the course of their adventure. They had stepped into the unknown together, and now they were walking back into the familiar, but with new eyes, new hearts, and a new understanding of themselves. As they continued walking, they passed by small cafes with flickering lights, the scent of freshly baked croissants wafting through the air. The streets were bathed in the soft glow of street lamps, their light casting long shadows that seemed to stretch out in front of them, as if leading them towards some new horizon. I never thought I'd feel this way, Emma said softly, breaking the silence. Like I've just discovered something that's been with me all along. Lucas turned to her, his eyes filled with quiet affection. I think we've both discovered it. The magic was never about the place we visited. It was about what we found inside ourselves. He smiled, a deep, knowing smile, as if he too had come to the same realization. We've been looking for something outside of us all this time. But it turns out, it was always right here. Emma's hand found his again, and for a moment, they simply walked in unison, letting the peace of the moment settle around them. The adventure they had just experienced, the mysterious caravan, the island, the glowing stone, had changed them. But more importantly, it had shown them something they hadn't realized they were missing. A sense of inner peace, a deeper connection to each other, and a reminder that the answers they sought were often right within their reach. It was a reminder that sometimes, the most important journey is the one that brings you home. Not just to a physical place, but to a deeper understanding of yourself, of each other, and of the world around you. And as they walked through the quiet streets of Paris, side by side, they knew that this adventure, this moment, would stay with them forever. It would be something they could look back on, a touchstone for the future, a reminder of the magic that exists in the world, and in the spaces between hearts. Yeah, Emma said, her voice full of contentment. Sometimes, the greatest adventure is the one that leads us back to where we started. But somehow, everything's different. Lucas nodded, squeezing her hand. It always is, he said. And that's what makes it so special. They walked on, the city glowing softly around them, knowing that the magic they had found wasn't confined to any island or stone. It was something that would stay with them, always. The end. As you close your eyes tonight, take a moment to think of Emma and Lucas, and the peaceful adventure they embarked on in that mysterious, magical caravan. Picture the soft glow of the lights, the gentle hum that carried them across the skies, and the calm, soothing energy that filled their hearts as they discovered something far more profound than they could have imagined. Their journey wasn't just one of place, it was a journey within themselves, a reminder that sometimes the answers we seek aren't found in the world around us, but in the quiet corners of our hearts. Imagine yourself drifting through your own dreams, carried by the same quiet hum that Emma and Lucas felt. Picture the world unfolding in front of you in the most serene and beautiful ways, where every path you walk is one of peace, clarity, and wonder. The world is full of mystery and beauty. Hidden corners, like the island they found, full of magic waiting to be discovered. And just like Emma and Lucas, you might find yourself stepping into the unknown, knowing that it's exactly where you need to be. As your mind begins to drift into the soothing embrace of sleep, allow yourself to feel the quiet peace that lingers in the air, just like it did on that enchanted island. Let the gentle whispers of possibility float around you, soft and comforting, like the mist that surrounded them. In the silence of the night, know that your own peaceful adventure is waiting for you, one that will take you to places you've never imagined, inside your heart, your mind, and even the world around you. Feel the calmness in your soul as you close your eyes, knowing that every dream you have tonight is part of your own personal journey, one of peace, clarity, and connection. Trust that wherever your dreams lead you, they will guide you with the same serenity Emma and Lucas discovered. No matter how vast or quiet the world may seem, remember that the magic is always there, hidden in the simplest moments, waiting for you to notice it. So, as you drift off to sleep tonight, let your dreams carry you, gently and peacefully, into your own adventure. Whether you're exploring distant lands or simply finding peace within, know that your journey is as magical and meaningful as Emma and Lucas was. Trust in the magic that surrounds you, and allow yourself to find the beauty that's waiting to be discovered, just like they did. Sweet dreams, and may your heart always find the peace it's looking for, wherever your dreams may take you.